and welcome to the Wednesday class that shall not be named. We're here as we begin the month of December for, of course, a celebration about the upcoming holiday of Hanukkah. And so we'll talk a little bit about Hanukkah. I just did a talk yesterday about the December dilemma for us. We may get to talk about that a little bit as well. Welcome, everybody, to our class. Sorry, it would take a little bit longer to get started today. I was on an important phone call I had to stay on. So welcome to Ron and to Arlene. I don't think Flossie's here today.
Oh, she's on her way to Florida.
Going to Florida, Eva, Michael, and Lou. And we're going to have a wonderful talk because, of course, Hanukkah is a great story. It's a wonderful holiday. It is not the greatest comeback in Judaism because it's bigger now than ever before, but it's definitely a huge comeback for Hanukkah in our modern age. It is maybe similar in some ways to the modern state of Israel. You know, they didn't have a country, a Jewish country in that part of the world for 2,000 years. So let's talk about Hanukkah. We'll talk first about the origins. And the origins are unique for a holiday for us. Why are they unique? Because Hanukkah is such a new holiday. It's only like 2,200 years old. It's basically a baby. It's new. And that is a joke. For those of you who didn't know, that is a joke. It is not a new holiday, but it is new for us because the other holidays we have, especially the major holidays found in the Torah, are so old. They're so old. How old are they? Thank you. They're so old that we have no references to them outside the Bible. As we mentioned previously, there's also very little talked about in terms of the major holidays as to how they're celebrated. Hanukkah is different because we have outside sources that help us understand the possible evolution of this holiday. And so let's begin with an essential moment in world history, Alexander the Great. So we'll see how Alexander the Great affects Hanukkah, a key person. The Persians had been in control of Israel since the mid-6th century. In the 4th century, around 330, Alexander takes over Israel without a shot, which is a phrase because there were no guns back then, obviously. But basically, Alexander, from what I hear, was very generous if you gave up your city. There were no repercussions. If you didn't give up your city, yes, that was a real problem for you. But the Jews in Israel at the time gave up. It said, it's yours. And why did they do that? One, of course, obviously, they feared retribution, but also because the Greeks were the Greeks. And what did the Greeks have? They had the best stuff. They had the best of everything on a level. It's kind of like America compared to some of the poorer countries in the world who don't even have access to the internet. The Greeks were so far beyond what anybody had ever seen before in terms of the stuff. Philosophy, math, science, architecture, urban planning, trading, literature, poetry, the games. It was a wealth beyond what anybody could imagine, and a lot of places were thrilled to be part of the Greek world. And Israel was no different. So the Persians had actually been, from what we know, and we don't know a lot, very good to the Jews living in Israel. They were good overlords, comparatively speaking, for several hundred years. But obviously they were going to lose anyway to the Greeks. So they were welcome in. Alexander, of course, dies very soon after taking Israel and taking over the world. Takes over the world by 32. My plan was to do it by 55. It's going to be more like 57. I got about 2 more years. And so the empire is broken up into 5 sections. 2 are important for us. Ptolemy, which was one of his generals, set up in Egypt. Seleucid, another of his generals, set up in what is now Syria area. And so the Seleucid Greeks, or the Assyrian Greeks, depending on how you phrased it, and the Ptolemaic Egyptians vied for control over Israel. The last of the Greek leaders of Egypt is very famous. That's Cleopatra. You may know who she is, obviously. She was the last before she was killed. And so they're vying for control. Eventually, the Seleucid Greeks take control over Israel. And I use Israel anachronistically. It was obviously not called that. And in the 2nd century, around 166, the new Seleucid king, who we call Antiochus or Antiochus, developed a new type of persecution that may never have really been used before, religious persecution. It's not going to be used that much against Jews for another 1,200 years, not at this level, because people, your gods were interchangeable. If you were going to attack somebody, it was going to be because of hatred, jealousy, you wanted their wealth, you coveted what they had. But religious persecution is a new strategy. And what he did is he took over the temple, he sacrificed pig's blood there, he put statues of Zeus, he forbade religious practices of any kind, ranging from observing the Sabbath, kashrut, to the bris, Brit Milah. And some Jews in this part of the world were fine. They were very assimilated, and they loved being Greek. And other Jews were not. And they were, of course, the Hasmoneans, which become known as the Maccabees. They rebel, and through guerrilla warfare against the Assyrian Greeks and against the Jews, they were not supportive of Jews who were assimilated. They didn't go around killing them, but what they famously did is they would go into Jewish people's homes, and they might hold the father at knife point, and they'd take the newborn male baby, and what would they do? Circumcise the baby, and then they'd leave. Because a lot of Jews didn't necessarily want to circumcise their kids because, of a lot of the stuff in the Greek world, business was done in bathhouses. And so, again, this was a very obvious difference. So the Maccabees win. It's a really big upset. It's the Mets in '69. It's huge. This is a very powerful entity they're facing. And this is a small group of people, guerrilla fighters. So they're able to take back Jerusalem. Years later, they kick the Assyrian Greeks out. As I mentioned, the Assyrian Greeks did have another issue. They were dealing with this small little army called the Roman Empire as well. And so that took up some of their time and resources. You can imagine how they did against them. If they lost the Maccabees, you can imagine how they did against the Romans. So the Maccabees take back the country. And some of you may know this story. If you do, I apologize for repeating it. And we talk about it quite a bit because it's so interesting. So we have 2 books of the Maccabees. They're not in the Bible. They're a section called the Apocrypha. Those are books that the rabbis had with them when they chose which books went into the Bible, but chose not to put them in for reasons we'll talk about. So they are of the biblical age. They're probably written as early as 60, 50, 40 years after the happenings. So pretty close, certainly in some cases within a livable memory. And so in December, they take back the temple. Now, what we have to remember also in ancient times, it was a little different in terms of the importance of holidays. What is the most important one day a year holiday on the Jewish calendar today, without even comparison? I said,
Yom
what's
Kippur.
Yom Kippur? Almost everybody will say Yom Kippur, whether you're Orthodox, Reform, conservative, not religious, most people will say Yom Kippur. In ancient times, it was not Yom Kippur, it was Sukkot. Sukkot was by far the most important holiday because Sukkot is the beginning of the rainy season. It's when you pray for rain. And if you're an agricultural society, rain is life. Rain is business. Rain is everything. If you don't have rain, you're in trouble. If you have too much rain, you're in trouble. And so Sukkot is the most important holiday, and they missed it because they're dedicating the temple back in December, and Sukkot is in September. So what they do, according to the books of the Maccabees, is they rededicate the temple and they say, we're going to do a Sukkot in December this year. We missed Sukkot in September, we're going to do it in December this year. And then we read that they decide, you know what, why don't we go ahead and have 2 Sukkots a year? We'll have a Sukkot in September that's more of a rain holiday, and we'll have another one in December, more of an agricultural one. So they end up having 2 Sukkots at the temple in Jerusalem. Except that we have resources from outside the Bible, and we have a letter sent to the Jews of Elephantine Island, which is an island next to Egypt, saying an answer to a question. They sent a letter saying, we know that you're celebrating Sukkot in December also in Jerusalem. Are we supposed to do it everywhere, or is that just for Israel or just for Jerusalem? And the answer is no, you should have a second Sukkot everywhere. So now we see there's a Sukkot in September, a Sukkot in December. Now all of this, by the way, is speculation, although we see this for sure. But now, this is going over a period of 100 years. Another 100+ years later, we see that Josephus, the greatest historian in Jewish history, speaks about this holiday. Who is Josephus? Josephus was a military governor in northern Israel during the war with the Romans in 67. He sees we're going to lose, and he goes to the other side. He decides to give up and become a Roman person. And so he becomes a Roman in whatever way possible, and he becomes a great historian. He writes a lot, including 2 major works, one about the war with the Romans and one about Jewish history of the Jews, the Jewish war. Again, it's from his perspective, which is different in many ways. His perspective is this perspective of a layman who may not be as familiar with the Bible, but knows what people of the day think, talking about it. So it's essential for Jewish history. And he describes this holiday in December that celebrates the Maccabees and their victory. And the holiday is called Lights. And it's a holiday about the victory of the Maccabees. It's an incredible victory. Now, what do we know about this holiday before? The Sukkot in December was not about the Maccabees. It was about a second Sukkot. But in the 1st century CE, a full 200 years later, the holiday has evolved into a holiday celebrating the Maccabees. Hooray! And that's where it could have ended. However, the Maccabees and the rabbis did not get along, even though they lived at different time periods. Let me explain why. When the Maccabees took over, they were fighting against assimilation. They were fighting against the Greeks, but not just against the military, but against the culture. However, the very next generation assimilates. Their names are like John Hyrcanus and Alexander Janus. What kind of names are those? Those are Greek names. So their descendants, in some cases, them themselves become very Greek. They become what they were fighting. And not only that, they become corrupt. And not only that, they do something which is considered a true Shanda in Judaism on a very high level, one of the worst things that could be done. And that is something that is so bad, that shows so much bravado that even Moses wouldn't do it. They become the kings of Israel, and they become the priests also. They combine church and state, which is a no-no in the Bible. Let's not even talk about what's going on in Israel that way. Moses was the political leader. He was the president. Aaron was the religious leader. And after their deaths, it was dictated that it could never be in the same family. You could not have a political leader and a religious leader. David was the king. Even David, at his greatest, when he was the most popular king in history and everything he touched turned to gold, would never have made himself the high priest or made his brother the high priest. It's just not done. And the Maccabees, although they are descended from the tribe of Levi, and they should not have made themselves. So they become corrupt, and they also take the kingship and the priesthood. As time goes on, also their descendants become known as the Sadducees. Have you heard of the Sadducees? During the time of the Romans, there were groups that supported Rome. They supported the temple sacrifices and taxes. And then you had another group called the Pharisees. These are the proto-rabbis, and they want to do stuff like pray. They want to study more on acts of loving kindness, kind of prophetic Judaism. And they were clashing with each other all the way until the year 70 when the temple's destroyed. And when the temple's destroyed, the priestly power dissipates because all of the power of the priest was based upon the sacrifice of the temple. So after the destruction of the temple, who wins out for the future of Judaism? It is the Pharisees, the rabbis. They're not called rabbis yet. What happens to the priests? We still have people who say they're descendants of the Kohanim and Levites. Are they in charge of anything? Religiously, no. They get an extra prayer here. For an aliyah, they get to have the first and second aliyah. But besides that, there is no... Now, individually, somebody who's a Kohen may become a big macher and become a rabbi and become an industrialist. But it's not because he's a Kohen that he will be leading. It's because of what he does. And so the rabbis are now creating the Talmud, and they're in charge of the future of the religion. And they see a holiday dedicated to who? The Maccabees. There's now a holiday in December dedicated to the Maccabees, who are, for better words, their enemies, more like a nemesis. And so what do they probably want to do? And this is speculation. They probably want to get rid of the holiday. Let's get rid of this holiday called lights. However, what maybe happened was they couldn't do it. Sometimes we can whitewash things and get rid of things and change memory. And sometimes we can't because people may have liked the holiday and they're used to celebrating it. And they want to celebrate it. It could have been a time, we don't know how big it was or how small, but it could have been a great time of joy. A lot of Jewish holidays are depressing. This is a feast. So they couldn't get rid of it. So in the Talmud, sometime maybe 100, 200, 300 years later, we're not sure when it was written, we see a story about the revolution against the Greeks, in which there was only enough oil to last for one day, and it was going to take 7 days to make the oil. And the miracle of Hanukkah is that the oil lasted for 8 days. Is that story in the book of Maccabees? Either one? No. Do we have any evidence of this story before the year 3, 4, 500? No. At the earliest, the first we hear of that story at the very earliest, and this is unlikely, would be 400 years later. Maybe, yeah, 100, 200, 400 years later. That's the earliest. So the story is probably 500 or 600 years after the happening. What is one of the thoughts as to what this story is based upon? The rabbis can't get rid of this holiday. They can't get rid of the history. They can't get rid of the people venerating the Maccabees, so they change the story. And in the story, who do they venerate? The miracle. So they venerate God. Now, a new story, Hanukkah, a new holiday, Hanukkah, is about the miracle of God. And for the next 1,500 years, Hanukkah would remain a very tiny holiday, very minor. What did you do on Hanukkah? You lit the candles, maybe played dreidel, you ate something with oil. Once the potato came to that part of the world across the Atlantic, you'd have latkes, and you may give your kids some coins, gelt, and that was it. That was all of Hanukkah. And the evolution ended, but it didn't. Because when did it finally start to evolve again? As unlikely as it may seem, Hanukkah made a comeback 2,000 years later. And it was so far later that the rabbis of the 19th and 20th century could care less about the issues with the priests 2,000 years ago. It doesn't matter anymore. It's been 2,000 years. And why did this revolutionary evolution occur? Because of Hanukkah's proximity to
Christmas.
It is a wonderfully strange story for us. In the 19th century, we had a book called The Christmas Carol. We had Coca-Cola eventually changing their emblem or their, what do they call it? Logo, whatever. And they decided they're going to get Santa Claus, but they're not going to get the Santa Claus everybody knows about, which is a big, strong Russian brute. They're going to make a Santa Claus with rosy cheeks and a white beard and a not a belly that is muscle, but a belly filled with cookies. And then, as time goes on, you've got Hallmark cards start coming. And then all these Jewish musicians who have gone through Tin Pan Alley and Broadway start writing songs as Christmas gets bigger, because the money is in writing songs for Christmas as opposed to Hanukkah. I don't think Irving Berlin was thinking often, how can I make a great Hanukkah song for the few people that celebrate Hanukkah, because it wasn't that big yet. But eventually, as the Macy Days Parade comes, as movies like It's a Wonderful Life become affiliated with Christmas, or Miracle on 34th Street are directly talking about Christmas, and as marketing starts to change, and you have major stores having entire window sections of just Christmas, Hanukkah starts to tag along. It's later, but it starts to tag along. Our kids don't feel as isolated. We get presents for 8 days. That's better than 1. We have our own music that is nowhere near as good. They It gets better in very recent times, but it's not that great. Never mind, forget about it when I went talk the music. Lou.
Adam Sandler wrote the Hanukkah song.
Exactly. That's more recent. Yes.
True.
Irving Berlin was writing stuff in the 20s and 30s.
Right.
Adam Sandler was not there, unfortunately, for all of us. And so this evolution continued as Christmas became this mega number one industry when it came to everything. And Hanukkah followed along as best as possible. And that is where it is today. Now for Hanukkah, we have parties. When do we have parties? All the time. There's lots of holiday parties because they include Hanukkah and lots of Hanukkah parties. We light the candles, give our kids lots of presents. We decorate our houses. We have dreidel collections and blue and white lights and my house is all over the place. And we are festive. And Chabad has big tree lightings for the whole city. And every synagogue has a big party, and every house has a big party. And we do something crazy. We eat latkes and sufganiyot and jelly donuts at the same time. Nobody's ever done that in history. Ashkenazim had their thing, Sephardic had them. They weren't combining them, but yet we do. And we have all of our family traditions, and it comes with what else? Winter break from school, so our kids are not in schools. And so this is what Hanukkah has become. It has become the most festive day or days on the Jewish calendar. It has supplanted Purim, which is in, of course, the Bible, but not in the Torah, so it's not a major holiday. So Hanukkah should be way down on the list. It's not biblical, even though its books were written at the time. Now, none of this, what I said, is completely provable beyond all doubt, because none of us were living for hundreds of years to see what was going on. The best hint to what happened is something called Hallel. Hallel are a set of prayers, mostly psalms, that you say only on major holidays. Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Sukkot, Passover, and Shavuot. 5 times a year. That's it. Except you don't, because you do part of Hallel on Hanukkah, which should not be the case at all. It's not even close, Alu.
How do you spell that?
Hallel. It just means praise. It's like hallelujah.
I see food trucks in New York with hollow food.
That's something else. Yeah, there's
okay.
used
That's
for
what I
other
want.
things too, Lil.
Okay.
It could also be the name of a kosher stamp as well.
Okay.
But why do we do Hallel on Hanukkah when it shouldn't be? What did Hanukkah start out as, maybe? Sukkot.
Mm-hmm.
And Sukkot is a major holiday.
Mm-hmm.
And later Hallel was added to Purim, maybe because they saw what was going on Hanukkah and they wanted it added to Purim too. Some say do it on Purim, you don't know. So, excuse me. So that is the evolution of Hanukkah, theoretically speaking. Now, it's an incredible comeback. It's like, Alexander Hamilton. He's bigger now than he was during his lifetime. Hanukkah's bigger now, that probably at its height, whenever that was. We don't know when it was because we don't have any real videos of people celebrating it. So now, the December dilemma is an interesting one, because the December dilemma is not a Jewish issue. It's a Jewish issue and a Christian issue, but for very different reasons. For Jews, the December dilemma is that we see so much Christmas and so much reference to Jesus and all the celebrations that it's hard to keep our families from getting involved. And it's how much do we allow our children to celebrate without worrying that they're going to leave Judaism And that's the debate. I live it because, people know, my mother-in-law is Catholic, so we celebrate Christmas. Sure, we're going to do Christmas and Hanukkah on the same day, which is great because I'm going to save a lot of money. A lot more expensive to have 8 days of Hanukkah and then have Christmas. That's double gifts because they give more presents on Christmas than we do on 8 days of Hanukkah. Christmas is a lot bigger. So how comfortable do we feel with our kids lighting the Christmas trees or going to Christmas pageants or hearing about it in schools or participating in plays? It's a very big question that's been around us for a long time. It's been around ever since really Christmas started to become a major holiday in the 19th century, but truthfully, it's more so today because it's a much bigger holiday now than it was even 50 years ago. I can go to a Target in the middle of Bupkis, or not, no, sorry, not Bupkis, that means nothing. In the middle of, what's the Yiddish word for in the middle of nowhere? I just forgot. Yehupitzville, whatever. Mississippi, and I'll go to the Target and they'll have Hanukkah gift wrapping paper and they'll have some Hanukkah lights at all Targets everywhere. And it's how big Hanukkah is because there's not very many Jews in a lot of states and they still have access to it. Plus, of course, with the internet, you can get anything anytime. So it is a very real issue that we contemplate and discuss. And I think obviously celebrating somebody else's holiday is great. But again, everybody has to do it to the level they feel comfortable. My kids are going to go see Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. If you haven't heard about it, it's about a reindeer who had a red nose. Pretty obvious in the title. And they're going to go see the play. I'll probably go see it with them. You know, they're going to see things on TV that's hard to regulate. And so it's a debate that we go through. And one of the great things is we celebrate Hanukkah a lot to make sure they understand we have our holiday too. And that's our December dilemma. Does anybody have any stories or thoughts on that before we get to the Christian December dilemma? Genevieve, and you are on.
Well, just because you're talking about mixing holidays, can you hear me okay?
I can't perfectly now.
Okay. There is also this whole like history about how the Christmas tree is actually pagan and they've adapted. So Christmas in itself has already adapted and taken in other holidays and mixed with Jesus. So yeah, that was all.
Yeah, Christmas has obviously evolved as well. I mean, in many ways, more so than even Hanukkah. Christmas, and now let's talk about the December dilemma for Christians, which is actually in many ways equally troublesome, sometimes in some cases worse. When I talk to my fellow clergy, priests, nuns, ministers, reverends, pastors, and it comes to this time of the year, what is the number one issue they have? What's the number one worry, the number one complaint of most Christian clergy at this time of year? What do you think it is?
It's that the holiday has become one of excess and not at all related to the birth of Christ.
Exactly. That's exactly. And they will, almost all of them to a T, say the same thing. It's a very complicated situation because it's great that everybody's celebrating. Christmas is the second most important holiday on their calendar for most. Easter is the main holiday. That has changed in the way it's celebrated, not religiously though. The question is, it has become so commercialized, has the meaning been lost? And that is the December dilemma for Christians. What's the balance between Christmas specials, parties, presents, decorating the house, and the meaning of the holiday, which is the birth of the most important being in their religion? We as Jews are fortunate that that is not a December dilemma for us. Why? Because it is not a major holiday. It's not like we're having major parties on Yom Kippur. This is a minor holiday. You're not going to read in the Talmud, do not celebrate this holiday too much. It's not there. I can guarantee you that. They don't talk about it at all in the Talmud except for a little passage. They don't say limit the amount of gifts you give because they weren't giving gifts. There's nothing in Judaism that says you have to worry about over celebrating it and losing the meaning, because it's a pretty minor holiday, although we want it to be meaningful. But for us, it is a celebration. That's what it is. And so both cultures and religions have the December dilemma. And it's interesting to see the evolution. One of the great, strange, and interesting, I think I said interesting twice, evolutions of Hanukkah that mimics Christmas is how we've taken it abroad. If you go to Europe, Christmas is celebrated a lot more than Easter in a lot of cultures, with presents. Now, they don't go to the excess of America. We just had a discussion. Why? Because nobody goes to the excess of America at anything. Maybe Japan and electronics, because they are very technical. But we go to the excess of everything we do. We're Americans. That's what we do. We think big and we do big. And it is great in some ways and a detriment in some. But again, that's who America is. Nobody in the world has not heard of the country of the United States of America. Nobody, unless you're a little kid or you live on an island and you've never spoken to another person in your life. We are bigger than life, and we have sent our Christmas specials abroad, our Amazon access abroad, our music abroad. As I tell people, England took over the world by what? Sending people to physically take over a country. America did no such thing. What did we do? We sent everybody in the world Coca-Cola and Blue Jeans and McDonald's and Taco Bell and Levi's. That's how we took over the world, through capitalism, through merchandise. And this is what Christians have done with Christmas in a lot of places. And the Jews have done the same thing. If you go to Europe, especially Western Europe, people will give presents to their kids on Hanukkah. If you go to Israel now, what do they give to their kids on Hanukkah in many households? Presents. They didn't do that before. That is an American tradition. Even in some Orthodox, maybe even in ultra-Orthodox, they may give presents on Hanukkah now, because there's nothing that really says you can't.
I like that both. Oh.
I'm sorry, Genevieve, and then whoever else.
It was David.
Oh, David. So Genevieve and David. Sorry, David.
I just like how both are centered around spreading light, like Festival of Lights. Because even though one's more candles and stuff, the whole representation of it's taking the one candle and spreading your light, or the metaphor, spreading your light. And a lot of Christian or Christmas is like that too. It's about, obviously the Christmas lights, but the whole spreading the light of Jesus and whatever.
And that's an excellent point. So there are some similarities in that way between the holidays. David.
It's interesting in the UK now, and it's, partly, I guess, demographics,
You would
maybe it's
speak in about that.
maybe political issues, but the trend seems to be, in terms of the December dilemma, to celebrate some kind of holiday without mentioning Christmas. And there's a lot of debate about that now. You don't see a Christmas tree out in the public areas. There are lights. It's always about holiday greetings or seasons greetings, and there's a bit of a backlash about that. I think there's less of that in the Catholic countries on the continent. Christmas is still a big deal, but here, there's not much mention of Christmas.
And that is an excellent point. We got to the fact that, and that's our last point, and thank you for bringing it up, Hanukkah has been a great ambassador for Judaism, because non-Jews know Hanukkah more than they know Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, maybe Passover a little bit, before most of our other holidays combined. Hanukkah is the holiday of the Jews to non-Jews, and it helps us celebrate together at this time of year. Most people may not know what Hanukkah is about, but they know the Jews have the Hanukkah, and we should say Happy Hanukkah. And so what has happened is with Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and a few other holidays, Diwali at this time of year, we see people now saying Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. Some people don't like it, which is okay. I have no problem saying Merry Christmas, but a lot of people want to welcome everybody. Eva. And you are mute. No, okay. So as
What
David
about-
said, I'm
I
sorry.
would also say,
you know,
David.
oh,
then
go
Michael.
ahead, David.
I was going to also say, I mean, these are, troubling times in terms of anti-Semitism here, that, more and more people are reluctant to, put out any indicia of Jewishness, whether on their persons or on their houses. So in terms of Festival of Lights, it seems like there are, fewer lights than there used to be.
And that's an excellent point as well. As anti-Semitism has increased, even in America, we're seeing people reticent to do this on the outside of their houses, which is unfortunate. By the way, David, I don't know if you might want to explain what your full name is, because you are the most Hanukkah-oriented person, because the initials under your thing spell basically dreidel or dreidel.
That's true. It was like a Czech German name. Like Lendl,
Right.
missing, but anyway, yeah, it's true.
But as is true, Hanukkah is something that people are not putting lights out on the outside as much anymore because of these fears, and I'm sure in Europe it's even more so. So there's a lot of issues, but again, as also Genevieve said, both holidays are welcoming holidays, and they are asking you to get into the spirit of the holiday and be generous and supportive and give. It is the most financially giving time of the year, obviously for the holidays, but also because it's the end of the financial year, the end of the year, so tax deductions. So all of this combines together, and as I like to say, it's one of the best changes I've done in Savannah is, I wear my yarmulke everywhere, so they know now. They didn't know. People for my first couple of years didn't know what it was, and I'd say, "Listen, I'm a rabbi. It's like a minister, and the yarmulke, and say, and I don't, I celebrate Hanukkah." And they'd say, "Merry Christmas." I'd say, I celebrate Hanukkah, and it's changed because now when people see me, they see the yarmulke and they immediately say, "Hey, Rabbi," and then what do they say? Merry Christmas. So I'm about 50% way there to making the changes I want. They know this means I'm a rabbi, I'm a Jewish. They haven't quite got so yeah, Hanukkah has really done a lot. It has really helped us become connected in many ways, overcoming insecurities for our kids and adults, a feeling of ability to welcome others into our household and go to other people's parties, because most people, a lot of people, when they see we're Jewish, they say Merry Christmas. Oh, you're Jewish? I'm sorry. Happy Hanukkah. You see that all the time, and it's great because we get a lot of parties, and quite frankly, the Christmas music is still a lot better. My wife's Jewish, but she still finally remembers Christmas. It's not a religious holiday, but she loves Christmas music. Why? Because it's good. It's terribly good. It's unfortunate how good it is. What's fortunate?
Go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
I
No,
was gonna say,
I'm just going to say something silly. I mean, this is all been an argument for Festivus,
right.
and at the same time, I mean that's the genius of it. If you think about what we've been talking about, that's the real genius of Festivus for the rest of us. You don't know
what Festivus is? It is a made-up holiday from the TV show Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Was it? Well, I think right. So George said he didn't celebrate. I forgot. He didn't want to spend money on holiday presents, so he said he celebrated Festivus or something like that. Yeah, it was a great episode. I got to watch that episode again.
but
also.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Michael. And Michael finished, and then go to Genevieve.
No, I'm just going to do my annual pitch. When we talk about the holidays, and we talk about how they've become secular, whether it's Christmas or Hanukkah. In many ways, it's become secular. And then my pitch is, Rabbi, you should pursue this in Savannah, is that we should not be using, in my mind, the menorah as the symbol, because that's a religious object. The Christmas tree is not. We should be using the dreidel as a symbol. And I say this every year, and everybody looks at me like I'm nuts, and that's fine.
Or the Jewish
I
star.
said it.
Or
Jewish star, that's fine.
Yeah.
So being the convert, so there are a lot of Christmas, we call them Christmas songs, which I came to find out, like when like O Come Emmanuel, that's our Christmas song. But then when I was starting to convert and the song kept coming to me in the middle of the year, I researched how many of our Christmas songs were actually Jewish songs that somehow we have made a tradition as being Christmas songs, when really they have so much Jewish history in the Torah, in the services.
And some of the tunes as well. And again, the other good thing about the Christmas songs is it brought a lot of money into the Jewish world because of the composers, but it's also, for a long time, most Jews the highest percentage of jobs by Jews was mercantilism. They were all merchants. And so what's their favorite time of the year? Christmas, because that's when they sell the most stuff. Not in every merchant, but certainly Christmas is. So it was a celebration for everybody. And now we've got, of course, Black Friday and Cyber Monday, none of which I unfortunately took advantage of this year. But so I hope everyone has a wonderful, wonderful Hanukkah and happy holidays. We have our Hanukkah party, which is fun for the whole family, on December 20th at 5:30. They have the lighting of the big Chabad. But again, you probably have one up there, but ours is probably on the same day. Ours is on December 29th at 3 o'clock. I know for those of you in Sun City, I don't know where the lighting is going to be, but I assume it's the same day at the same time. But our party will be great. We'll have music, we'll have dancing. We start at 5:30 and we have like dinner and then a DJ, and then we'll have singing, and then we'll go into the sanctuary and have a Rockin' Shabbat with other people. So it's a lot of fun. And we also will have the best latkes of all time, because we get the same latkes that are made for the food festival. So that, and anybody else have any other questions or thoughts? Now, we will not have a class next week. I apologize. I've been asked, I teach every year about Hanukkah at Hancock Elementary and Middle School, and that was the day they asked me to do it. So I will be teaching about Hanukkah on the 11th. So we will have our next class on the 18th, and then we will not have it on the 25th, and probably not on the next one, because that's probably the first. The 25th and the 1st will be holidays, obviously. So that means we'll have one more class. I'll send out a note before next year. So I want everyone to have I don't think does Hanukkah start before the next class? I don't think it does. No, because it starts on the 25th.
25th. So
this year Hanukkah is, of course, on Christmas. It's also on 2 Gregorian calendar years, because it goes into January this year. So I hope everybody has fun with the family, friends. Hope you get to see family. And again, it's a fun time, and enjoy all those specials. There's some good Hanukkah specials as well. All right, we'll conclude with, as Jews and a rabbi, I am going to do the daring deed of asking everyone what their favorite Christmas movie is, because some of them are so awesome. What is
It's
your
a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life.
yeah, you got it.
Which didn't make money when it first came out, and Stewart thought it was a career ender, and of course that was it made much money later. Anybody else?
David nailed it.
So what?
Oh, go ahead.
What, Michael, and then Jenny?
No, I said David nailed it.
Oh, David nailed it. Okay, Genevieve, what's yours?
I mean, I like a lot, but I kind of like Santa Claus with Tim Allen. when he has to like become Santa Claus.
Santa Claus, Clause, yeah.
Mm.
I am my wife.
How about Miracle on 34th Street?
The original one from the 19th.
Original one, yeah.
So good.
That's a good choice.
Oh, no, A Christmas Story.
That is my wife's
That's very
one of her
good,
two
too.
favorites. The Christmas Story is my wife's hometown,
Very good.
where she grew up.
Uh,
That's where it was filmed. They changed the name in the movie, but it's her hometown.
Yeah.
And then the other one my wife really likes, and I do too, is Christmas Vacation. That may be my favorite.
That's what I was trying to say before, but I was muted. The Chevy Chase one.
Yes, because she always calls me, I'm her Clark Griswold.
Yeah.
She says is sexy, and I'm like, really? Like Sean Connery, 07. She's like, no, Clark Griswold is sexier. That is a lie, in case you're wondering. So everyone have a wonderful, wonderful
Yeah.
holiday. We hope to see you. If not, we'll see you in 2 weeks. We continue to have service. Oh, I forgot. Boy, this Saturday we have a wonderful, I don't know if both of them are coming, wonderful guest speakers. And I don't know if Lisa and Rachel are both coming out to call. It's a couple, two women in Charleston who wrote a cookbook called Kugels and Collards. It's a combination of recipes and history about Jews living in the South. Wonderful speakers. I emceed an event where they were the speakers. The book will be here. You can buy it beforehand. You can buy it after, get it, autograph it. They're really wonderful. So that'll be this Saturday. So everyone else, everyone
This
have a,
Saturday is also the bridge race.
that's right. It's a bridge race. So check coming in to see if it works for you. If it doesn't, understandable. But check online. I think sometimes if you come in early, I think it's fine. But if you wait till late, you may not be. So good point. Thank you, Ron. I completely forgot about that. We're sending in a note to the congregation, though. All right, or we may have already done. So everyone have a wonderful Hanukkah. Enjoy it. And I look forward to seeing you soon. And I hope you guys get lots of good presents and give lots of good presents to your family, all right? Stay safe, everybody. And oh,
Yeah.
one more thing. I keep forgetting everything. My goodness. Have you guys heard of the Maccabees?
Sure.
Maccabees are a choral group where they sing,
Yeah.
and it sounds like instruments, but it's
Yeah.
actually their voices. We brought them to Savannah. They do all these wonderful videos, and their latest video, and I haven't even seen it yet, one of the guys singing has a Mikvah Israel Shalom Y'all t-shirt, the one we gave him when he came down here. So just put that's going to go on our Facebook. Ron?
Yeah, are you going to be at the Rosendorf house this evening?
I'll be there tonight. So
Yeah.
and at Jane's house, we're gonna honor Larry's memory at 7 p.m. tonight. If you have any questions about the address or anything, give me a call. Okay, guys, stay safe, everybody.
Everybody, be well.
Be well.
Well,